you, sir, actually portrayed Vice President Mike Pence in prepping Senator Harris for tonight's debate. What are we going to see from Senator Harris?
Well, what you're going to see is a chance for Senator Harris to address the American people directly, away from the Trump Twitter noise machine, and speak to the issues that are really on our minds as a country. First and foremost, how are we actually going to end this pandemic that the administration failed to contain? How are we going to bring back an economy that actually works for everybody, with so many Americans just getting blow after blow, especially with this latest news that the president's walking away from negotiations on relief? These are the things I think most people are tuning in, wanting to hear about. There'll be a lot of talking points from Mike Pence, of course, and he's let's be clear, a very effective debater after years as a radio host and a lot of time in politics too. But I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, specifically on the issue of the pandemic, what immediately would a Biden administration do with Senator Harris as vice president to end this pandemic?
Well, what you'd see is a much more robust and clear plan, both on testing and on vaccine development. But you'd also see clear communication about what we Americans are supposed to do. By some estimates, just getting our act together on masking alone might save 100,000 lives. But that's almost impossible to do if mayors or local public health officials or governors are being contradicted by a president of the United States mocking mask wearing. That's just one example of the unofficial role of the presidency, communicating clearly, in addition to all of the administrative work that's got to be improved before it's too late.
Now, I say this respectfully. You got elected in a state that is conservative, and there's some in your party who are incredibly concerned that Senator Harris would be too far to the left and move nominee Biden too far to the left, especially on issues pertaining to rebuilding the economy. Does she have to navigate through, how does she navigate through that without really pushing away so much of the business community?
Well, I think the opportunity right now is to build an economy that's going to work for all of us. And, you know, one thing that's revealing is that Moody's scored the two campaigns and found that a Biden-Harris ticket would be much better for the economy than 4 more years of Donald Trump and Mike Pence. And it's not hard to see why. After all, Donald Trump's on track to be the first president since Herbert Hoover to end a term with fewer jobs than when he started. You know, this is a debate that we absolutely welcome, and one that I think the American people really deserve to hear, because there's a lot of talk on their side about the economy. The results have been disastrous.
You mentioned about the fiscal stimulus talks back in Washington, D.C. Now, the Biden administration has proposed increasing, once again, the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. However, they've also promised much more infrastructure spending. How does that balance, and how would Senator Harris, especially as we're on this debate, how does she push back against a tax when you know Vice President Pence is going to say you just want to raise taxes?
Well, here's what we know. First of all, the vast majority of Americans already agree with us that the wealthiest and corporations ought to pay their fair share in taxes. And for those in the business community wondering what the effect will be, look at how much better growth was during periods where the tax code was fairer and we were making those crucial infrastructure investments and other investments in education, health, and so on, that are really what it takes for an economy to grow. We know what it's going to take to restore American competitiveness. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. It requires real action, real investment, and we're absolutely capable of delivering that with common sense adjustments to the tax code that make it fairer than it's been. I mean, today, you know, the top 1%, often many of them, including the president apparently, pay an effective tax that's lower than school teachers. That makes no sense, and it's no way to fund the urgent needs of keeping our economy competitive.
Trade policy is so incredibly important. You've written about this, you've spoken about this, especially in terms of negotiating with China. The Republicans have really attacked Joe Biden, especially on the issue of China. Would tariffs still be on the table in a Biden administration? And also, what do you say to middle-class workers who are swing voters who are saying, you know what? China's been eating our lunch for too long.
Well, this is a big issue where I come from in the industrial Midwest. The problem is China's eating our breakfast, lunch, and dinner right now under Donald Trump. Look, Xi Jinping got Donald Trump to praise him for his, quote, transparency. I mean, President Trump did that on his own. It is clear that the Chinese Communist Party is running circles around this president who thinks he's a great negotiator, but lost a trade war with terrible consequences for consumers, for farmers around where I live, for manufacturing. What we're going to have with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in office is an actual strategy for dealing with China. And I would add, if you want to deal with China, you got to have friends. This president's never missed an opportunity to alienate our allies. It'll be the reverse on this president, next president's watch.
There's a historic nature to Senator Harris's candidacy for vice presidency. There's also, of course, a question that every voter has when watching these debates, which is, can you pass the commander-in-chief test? Based upon your experiences with her, what have you learned? And does she pass the commander-in-chief test?
She absolutely does. You know, having served in the military and frankly, having come to respect her even more during the time we were competing. I've seen in her somebody who is experienced, who served on the Senate Intelligence Committee, who's been to war zones, but also who understands how to make tough decisions. I mean, she was leading in California the largest Department of Justice in the U.S. besides the U.S. Department of Justice. So I think she is a great complement to what Joe Biden is going to bring as commander-in-chief, and serving at his side, I think she's going to do a phenomenal job for the American people.
Are you optimistic, just to bring it back to Washington, final question for you, are you optimistic that Speaker Pelosi and the White House can get to a deal, at least even on airlines?
I hope so, but with this White House, you just don't know, and that's exactly the kind of chaos and uncertainty that's made it difficult, not just for investors, but most importantly for ordinary Americans who could do without 4 more years of chaos and confusion.